Hey, it's Mike here, and today vegans are all caps in danger, according to carnivore doctor Ken Berry and his interviewee, author Lierre Keith, who wrote The Vegetarian Myth. And 7 years ago now, I made a video responding to her and her book, and I have yet to see my claims and scientific resources in that video be debunked. But it is really interesting to see how Lierre's attacks against veganism have sort of evolved or changed over the years. You know, what is she saying today?
You'll fall into a coma and you can die. This is very serious.
What is the interview about? And I will say the interview contains such gems as defending dog meat consumption.
And many people consider it part of their cultural heritage to eat traditional dog dishes. And so you're actually making fun of, I don't know, 20 or 30 million people's culture right now.
And fear of life over soy milk?
Sure.
You couldn't just buy weird junk food if you were going to be vegan back then. You really, like, they didn't have soy milk in containers.
Right.
Thank God. I mean, that would have killed me sooner, but...
Also did a video responding a while back to Berry's completely unhinged claims that all plants are bad or just unhealthy. Anyway, let's get to it. During the video, Ken calls on the viewers to share the video to save any vegans that you might know.
If you have a vegan in your family or a friend who's a vegan, please share this video with them.
And apparently it's working because according to a commenter, they were gonna go vegan, but now they're not. A lot of people liked that one. The thumbnail also weirdly baits people with plant-based tips. I think we know how those are gonna go, but that's for the end. Well, it is an interview, so we can't expect a ton of science. It is a ton of anecdotes, pretty much only, which is right in line with Lierre Keith's Vegetarian Myth book, which, as a reviewer wrote, as I mentioned years back, has references that are dominated by non-scientific sources, about 85% of them. That means that my most recent video I did on light therapy, which had 45 scientific citations, had 50% more than her entire book. Anyway, let's take a swim in this anecdote soup of an interview, because apparently, allegedly, it's convinced one person at least. And to frame her anecdotal health stories that are coming up, it's worth mentioning research like how vegans have 15% lower cancer rates, massively lower diabetes and high blood pressure rates, lower thyroid, hypothyroid, obesity, heart disease, and trend at about 15% lower mortality. However, low carb diets, which they're both pushing, meta-analysis show that these are associated with about 30% increased risk of all-cause mortality. Anyway, she tries to convince us that she was eating a healthy vegan diet when she was vegan decades ago.
So I was the super pure vegan. I mean, I would not eat like bread if it had white flour in it. It had to be the whole grain stuff.
Sure.
So I was not like the junk food vegans. There's people who eat Oreos and potato chips and they call themselves vegan. That was not me. It was brown rice, you know, and lentils. The thing is, though, in the 80s, we didn't have all those weird soy analog fake meat things yet. And in a way, that's really good, because I think I would have ended up a lot worse off if I had been living on those, just because soy is so horrendous.
She seems to have this deep fear of soy, but doesn't really seem to back it up. But from this meta-analysis of about 30 studies, higher soy consumption was associated with lower levels of our leading killer, cardiovascular disease, and lower levels of type 2 diabetes, which we'll see she is really concerned about throughout the video.
Sure.
You couldn't just buy weird junk food if you were going to be vegan back then. You really, like, they didn't have soy milk in containers.
Right.
Thank God. I mean, that would have killed me sooner, but...
Show me on this carton where the soy milk hurt you. No, this is absolutely ridiculous. Even these scary, like, binder ingredients like soy lecithin in various milks lower cholesterol. So how about that? And at this point, a commenter who's very clearly vegan points out, hey, well, how do you feel about eating dog meat? And the response, like, actually had me rolling. Here they are.
If you can tell by Pete's question, do you think dog is a good source of protein? First of all, yes, dog is an excellent source of protein. It is a source of complete protein, all the amino acids.
This is funny because they've just taken such a pro-animal product and flesh consumption stance that, like, they have to double down and defend dog meat consumption.
And many people consider it part of their cultural heritage to eat traditional dog dishes. And so you're actually making fun of I don't know, 20 or 30 million people's culture right now.
And only somebody in that ridiculous position would be more concerned with how dog eaters were getting offended than with dogs' actual lives being taken. But the main point here is they're assuming that culture is automatically right, because culture, which is completely, again, unhinged. I mean, if we have a cannibalistic culture, they shouldn't just be allowed to hunt down and kill humans because of their culture. You know, female hoo-ha, mutilation, things like that. You know, with their stance, all of that is completely acceptable and okay. Weird ground to stand on.
I get where he's coming from. He wants to say, look, are you going to draw a line somewhere?
That's right.
Which animals are appropriate to eat and which animals aren't, and we're all going to make our different decisions. But I have to say that having gone through this whole kind of journey, that my point is I don't draw a line anymore at all, that it's actually a circle.
Okay, so then tell me right now, if you have a golden retriever right there and you have a slug, we're going to talk about slugs more in a bit, or even a tree, which we'll talk about as well. She's trying to say she has no difference between, you know, killing the golden retriever or the slug or the tree, which is, you know, way more anti-speciesist than even vegans claim to be, most of them.
For something to live, something else has to die. And it doesn't really matter whether you call yourself a vegan or not. There are dead animals in every bite of food that you're eating, because that's what life is. But
I think you can still be vegan and understand that you're going to have some degree of death footprint and accept that. I mean, even in the definition of veganism itself, of the vegan society, it's seeking to reduce harm to animals as much as is practical or possible, not automatically zero or just die. And Ken Berry hops in here with a wild harvest deaths claim.
All of the bacterial and fungal life, that's going to kill insects. So if you're eating nothing but wheat, rice, oats, and corn, you are literally eating millions of dead carcasses that had to die so that you could have your tofu.
Yeah, I'm personally, every single bite of wheat, millions of carcasses. I'm pretty sure the math doesn't come out that way. So we're talking about inadvertently and accidentally killing some animals, which do die in the process of you being alive, which would be the vegan option, or all of that plus purposefully paying people to kill highly sentient animals on top of that. Simply put, it's a variation of the trolley problem, where you have somebody who has the lever for which way the train goes, and if it goes straight, it's gonna kill several people, but if they flick the switch, it's gonna turn and just kill one person, but you know, it was their choice, and it was the effect of them that killed that person. That's the dilemma there. But we can have a variation on this, which is saying, you are the trolley, and you are going straight, and currently on an average omnivorous diet, you're going to be killing thousands of these animals on purpose throughout your lifetime, plus all of these accidental harvest deaths from the plants they are eating and the plants that those animals are eating. So both of those, you've got 3 of those individual sort of sources of animal death contribution. Or you can flick the switch and go the other way and choose the vegan diet, where you're only having those accidental harvest and farming deaths. And again, to a lesser degree, because animals eat plants too. Now, from the FAO, up to half of the planet's grain is fed to animals. So it's a no-brainer here if you're trying to reduce suffering and harm. Yeah, you pull that lever.
I had to have manure from somewhere. And then the process of actually growing those plants for me to eat meant I was killing all kinds of other things. There was no way to have a garden without doing some death to some animals.
It really is the same topic, but she goes off into her trying to grow her own food, and there being all these slugs, and she relocated them, but thought, oh, they must be starving if she does that, so she killed them anyway.
Some of these slugs are going to starve, right? There's no way that there's like no slugs here where I can just sort of plug the hole by adding more slugs. They're going to die.
Yes.
Like, you're fooling yourself if you think that this is not part of this.
And yeah, there is such a thing as veganic agriculture. It's at least trying to reduce animal harm in farming as well. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect. That's a good time to plug organizations like the Veganic Agriculture Network and the Vegan Organic Network, which has a whole page on pests and how to reduce harm to them. And so Lierre, when realizing that she was going to end up killing some snails in some way or another, just threw her hands up and went, screw it, let's just be okay with all animal deaths, when she could have just tried to reduce harm over time. Okay, she's relocating the snails that time, but then maybe next time, because her garden was perhaps too moist or not biodiverse enough, she can just fix those and then have less snail deaths in the future. But a good analogy for her logic here is just like if you're driving a car, yeah, you might hit some bugs and maybe even hit an animal when driving every once in a while by accident, and therefore it's completely okay to just swerve and hit any animal that you see. I mean, I'd love to see Lierre driving. Oh, there's the raccoon on the median. I'm just gonna go ahead and swerve. 1 point for me. Yeah, oh, someone's walking their dog over there on the sidewalk. Oh, sorry, your dog's dead. Well, hey, life is a circle. Get over it. All right, now for a quick break with our video sponsor, Seeds DS01 Daily Symbiotic. One of these little guys has 53.6 billion active bacterial cell units. So it's a probiotic, but it also has prebiotics like awesome antioxidant-rich pomegranate, and it contains 24 different strains, which are scientifically shown to support various areas of health, like gut barrier, gut immunity, skin health, heart health, and digestive health, which brings me to Ken Berry and his Carnivore Diet. Oftentimes on these forums, we're seeing people just slingshotting between diarrhea and constipation. Like, there are so many posts about this on these forums. So I thought I'd mention a couple randomized control trials on strains in seed, which help with this. Like this one, helped with the ease of expulsion, which I think a few of these people could use. And this randomized control trial also found some improved pooping frequency, balanced some things out. Although continuing to eat zero fiber in your diet is probably not gonna get you there alone. And Lindy and I have been taking seed since 2021 now, and Lindy especially is loving it, seeing a ton of benefits. And so if you would like to try to regulate things, or you just wanna try it for all of the other reasons I mentioned in the past, you can click the link below and use the code MIC25, MIC25 for 25% off your first month's supply. All right. And this is a really long interview, over an hour, so I can't touch on everything. But later in that interview, she mentioned some habitat loss through modern farming, etc. But from this pretty recent Oxford study, vegans' biodiversity, or wild animal killing footprint is 2/3 lower than a meat eater, and also their carbon footprint is 75% lower in terms of diet. Now we get into her health issues, and this is where that topic of diabetes and blood sugar, etc. comes in.
And the very first thing was the blood sugar crashes, which I did not have language for. It took me 17, 18 years to understand what that was. But I started to have this thing where I would get shaky and weak and feel lightheaded and start to cry over nothing. And the compulsion was just, if you don't put food in your mouth, you're gonna die. And I now know what was happening. Every time I ate, it was just sugar. You can call it complex carbohydrate if it makes you feel better, but I'm telling you, it breaks down to simple sugar. Very, very narrow range of blood sugar under which our brains can function. Too high or too low, you'll fall into a coma and you can die. This is very serious.
The problem is research again and again shows that whole complex carbs don't cause these blood sugar drops, which can happen, to be fair, after a huge blood sugar spike. For example, from this study, glucose brings you up and then brings you down, crashing below baseline a little bit, which maybe some people will feel. But they even made bread with white rice flour, and that didn't cause a crash in their subjects who were healthy. And then I should mention a large study like this one showing that whole grain consumption was associated with, from 2 servings, 20% lower risk of type 2 diabetes. Now my guess here is that this is another case of somebody not getting enough calories and feeling faint, and there's a few more pieces of information to support that as we go on.
By the time I was really done with the whole vegan thing, it was like semi-constant grazing. Like every half an hour, 20 minutes, I just had to put some bite of something in my mouth to not feel like I was going to die. So
my guess is that she was eating really low calorie foods, maybe relying on things like carrot snacks or something that has no calories, and then not feeling great. But for example, I eat 3 normal meals a day and then occasionally a mid-afternoon snack. I don't know.
Yeah, so what we would eat would be we'd get granola or muesli, the more the European kind, and then we would pour, don't laugh, we would pour apple juice on it.
I'd love to see what she ate in a day back then.
So that was the first thing that went, was my insulin receptors.
No, this is a wild self-diagnosis, just I feel my insulin receptors going, and this is, again, a trait of ex-vegans. I covered this in my recent ebook, Level 5 Vegan, the propensity to skip seeing doctors and actually getting blood tests. We have a little thing called hemoglobin A1C, and even, how about that, a blood glucose test to see if something was actually going on with blood sugar.
Second thing that went was I stopped menstruating.
This is another supporting point for her not getting enough calories. this requires enough calories to tell your body, yes, I am ready to reproduce. But then if you get below 1,600 or 1,500 calories, your body might be getting some different signals.
And in the vegan world, this is a good sign. There's a whole mythology about how, oh no, women aren't supposed to.
No, it is not. At least thankfully not anymore. Maybe some fringe people in the past did say this, but that's why I literally started doing YouTube, to put science behind people going on a vegan diet and not let those voices prevail. Don't get me started on the myths that carnivores currently believe and are rapidly spreading. In fact, one of my upcoming videos is going to be top 5 carnivore myths. So yeah, I guess I am already started on it anyway.
And what's not, and I can just tell you right off the bat, Lierre, any diet that makes you lose your menstrual period, that's not a proper human diet by definition.
This is really interesting because there's actually quite a bit of material about people on keto or carnivore diets, which is what these people are proposing instead, losing their periods. Now we have this carnivore diet being like, I lost my period. And in the comments, somebody also saying, yeah, I did lose my period when I was eating like 1,500 calories. Surprise? Some of this could be with how carnivore is so unappetizing. This woman tried to go on a carnivore diet for a day, and she was so disgusted that she had to skip eating dinner because she had just eaten too much meat and couldn't even eat enough calories to keep a human going.
All right, here's the thing. I really did give this my best shot. I got the highest quality meat that was in my area. I made sure to look up how to prepare each type of meat. I feel like crap. I never thought I would long for the tender caress of a vegetable against my tongue until today. This sucks to me, and I will not be doing the carnivore diet ever again.
Oh, and here's an article by a naturopathic doctor which brings up some other good points, that it might not just be calories, but it could also be a low carbohydrate intake literally triggering this. Saying that when it comes to maintaining menstrual cycles, the hypothalamus is just as sensitive to carbohydrate availability as it is to total calorie availability. Finally, this study on some young women doing a keto diet found that nearly half of their menstrual cycles were dysfunctional. Yes, 45% of female subjects had a loss of period or amenorrhea or other period dysfunction, but the researchers weren't surprised because the diet mimics starvation. So
that's not a proper human diet by definition.
Anyway, then she gets into mental health and just continues to make wild claims. In this case, what your average vegan would experience mentally. Here she is.
As everybody can tell you who's been through this, the depression, anxiety, just the level of just psychic torment all the time from not having any protein and not having any good animal fats. Your brain just can't handle it. And so you're just sad and angry and depressed and suicidal all the time, and you don't know why.
And despite meat industry funded studies on vegetarians and depression, recent actual vegan studies show the opposite. Yeah, this one from Australia found that vegans had lower anxiety and depression scores, and the meat eaters' depressive symptom score averaged in the mildly depressed zone. So that's not looking good.
So you'll find reasons to fill in the blanks, but it's nutritional. I can tell you that that's
We also have this recent study on vegans showing that their rate of good well-being was twice as high as the meat eaters. And as for her still making protein-related claims in 2024, I wonder what Patrick Babumi in Vegan Strongman would have to say about that. He speaks a few languages. I'll let him describe in the language of car flipping to you.
For any guy watching that day, it wasn't just a car Patrick had crushed. It was a myth they'd been fed their entire lives.
And she also has a serious element of that ex-vegan exhale, that sort of mental relaxation of, oh, it's finally over. I'm finally giving in to all of my family members and friends, as she said she had, telling her to stop. And then you get to finally relax to a biologically impossible degree. Much like raw alignment, eating some fish and immediately having things heal like moments later. She said she ate some tuna and felt it through every cell of her body. That's a quote from her book. She talks about the tuna in the interview as well.
The basis of it is the nutrition, because the moment you get some real food, it's night and day. It's like the world goes from black and white to color in a half an hour.
So this is how Lierre believes that human biology eats when you eat some food. You know, you put fish in your mouth and then boom, bing, bing, boom, 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 it just bounces around your body, kaboom, boom, boom, boom. That's how science works. What's actually happening? Well, it is the case that if you eat a high calorie food, I don't think anyone's gonna eat whey protein powder and have this experience, but salmon and tuna, for people, boom, you get that dopamine hit. As this Dartmouth article mentions, you know, eating high calorie foods causes dopamine to flood into the ventral tegmental area of the brain, which is the portion of the brain that makes sure that basic needs are met.
So that was the first thing, was the eggs. And I did right away notice some very interesting things. 4 days eating eggs, I woke up and my skin was completely different. I went from that terrible gray pallor that, sorry, all the vegans have, to actually having like a rosy...
Oh, I thought this one was funny because somebody immediately commented, the Mike the Vegan look, referring to that gray skin tone. Yeah, I mean, I'm a white dude, it is winter, and in the past I have used some sort of white fluorescent lights out of convenience. I'm also colorblind, so I'm not gonna be great at color balancing, but you know, here's a completely unedited picture of me from the summer, if that makes anybody feel better. I also think this is interesting because there are just so many like super hot vegan actors and musicians and models that, you know, people don't necessarily realize are vegan. I mean, just look at these people. Hot, super hot, also hot, extra hot, not gray and pallid. And this is actually a picture of Lierre Keith when she was vegan. Just kidding, that's actually Ruby Rose, you know, who also has short hair and is vegan. But it is the case that, like, just in terms of bias, if a vegan is looking at a carnivore or a carnivore low carb or anti-vegan is looking at a vegan, they're gonna think the other party looks worse than they actually do. That was well illustrated by this dude in the comments of one of my posts about this, saying, you know, he would post a picture of his physique on carnivore forums saying he was a vegan, and they would all call him weak and feminine, but then going on another carnivore forum saying he was a carnivore, everyone say that he was jacked and an example of carnivore health. Great experiment. Now they get into discussion of why anatomically it is healthier for us to not be vegan and just eat a ton of meat, as much meat as we possibly want. And they say, oh, it's because we're apex predators.
And our role ultimately is apex predators. Our role is to keep the herds, the giant herds on the plains of Africa, tightly bunched, quickly moving, so that they don't destroy the grass. It's the role of lions, it's the role of wolves, it's the role of bear, and that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, we literally are lions. Like, I look at lions and look at us and I'm like, I actually don't even see the difference.
Completely different. Think about a gorilla. You've got this great big barrel and then little arms and legs. What is in that barrel? A completely different, enormous digestive system.
Yes.
We have really short ones like carnivores.
Yeah, well, some charts have been horribly manipulated, like this one, or some that just count all of our limb height as well, but don't count animal limb height in like digestion to body size ratio. It's pretty clear that our digestive system is still really long, way longer than a lion or other cats compared to our body size. And she tries to separate us from other herbivorous apes, talking about our digestive system length. From this study and its chart, humans actually have the longest small intestine of all of the apes it compared. The colon is smaller, which I believe was a shift from eating leaves and foliage to eating more starch. We have strong evidence of shifts to cooked starch 600,000 years ago. You know, modern humans have been around for 300, and researchers point to that starch fueling our brain growth. And in terms of that length from this study, yeah, herbivores have longer small intestines and carnivores have smaller small intestines. So why is it that humans are even longer than their herbivorous ape cousins? And just looking at a chimp versus a human digestive system, it almost looks the same. Like, let's be honest, it's almost the same. They're eating 97% plants. And this length of our digestive system is literally part of the reason that meat is carcinogenic for us. And I will say, I try not to put too much stock in these like animal anatomic size comparisons here. What matters is like health outcomes in the literature, in the research, and they're good when you eat plants. And she gets into plant sentience, essentially saying that, yeah, there's no difference between our sentience level and plants.
And plants are just as sentient as we are. They're just really different, but they do many of the same things. So,
and this is still an inconsistent take, because if you think all of these beings are equally sentient, then you eat the least of all of them. And of course, if you're eating animals and those animals plants, and probably plants as well, as many meat eaters do, like, it doesn't make sense. But I know it's absolutely dishonest, because take that grass-fed cow that they're like, oh, it has like no animal impact except the cow they're killing. Okay, you know, go up and stab that cow. I want a heart rate monitor, all those things. You know, measure skin conductivity, all these emotional response things. Measure that compared to you cutting the grass. Don't tell me that those are equivalent. You're just lying. You're lying to our faces. I don't even care. And that does remind me of the one time that I was debating somebody in Discord and they admitted that they would rather kill 500 puppies than mow the grass. Okay, that's where you guys are in terms of holding ground.
And there are albino redwoods. They cannot photosynthesize. And so they would die, but they're alive out there in the forest. And the reason is because all of their friends, the other redwoods in their family, keep them alive. And they keep them alive by sending nutrients through the soil and the roots. And they are obviously loved members of their community. Otherwise, nobody would bother to keep them alive. So,
you know, I love trees as much as the next hippie, but tell me this, you know, you can answer for yourself. What is more likely, that redwood trees growing together in a forest help share nutrients for the overall health and survivability of the forest, or that these redwoods are experiencing love and are like, here, take some of my nutrients consciously and deliberately to the like albino redwood? You can choose.
Plants take care of each other, and they send each other really complicated messages that says, there's a deer coming this way. We just got bit. You want to be careful. Deer is coming. And then the other plants get those messages and make their leaves stiff and start making chemicals that deers don't like to keep the deer away.
So if this is your belief, then every time you walk by a motion-censored light, is that proof that like the building itself is sentient? I mean, there's so many limitations to this. We and other animals have central nervous systems. We've documented them feeling pain, remembering pain, being traumatized. We haven't done that with plants. Then they get to their like plant-based tips, and spoiler alert, it's really just them telling people to eat more animal products, completely dishonest. The closest they get is saying, oh, you should stop eating seed oils and you should eat coconut oil, which is so ironic because coconut oil raises LDL.
And then the other one, of course, is the seed oils, the industrial seed oils, the canola, the corn oil, what vegetable oil, whatever even that is. Just stop. You are wrecking every cell in your body with that stuff.
Of course, she advocates for butter, but is against seed oils when a study like this one of 500,000 people showed that mortality was higher with butter by 7% per tablespoon compared to the canola oil, which was lower risk of death. And then I have a couple points on her other views. I mentioned in the past, you know, she is very much a feminist. She has her Women's Liberation Front shirt on. Yet she is advocating for people to, you know, be very not feminist toward female animals, you know, take calves away from cows because you need their milk, and then, you know, put them in the meat industry, and of course take the eggs from female chickens, and on and on. But it's also worth just briefly mentioning some of her other views that recently an anonymous vegan tipped me to, which are quite wild and were covered by a sort of political watchdog journal, who interestingly referred to her dietary views as death fetishism. You know, hearing some more of the interview that I cut out, I think that is pretty appropriate.
All of us depend on the deaths of other creatures. That is literally what life is. It's one creature eating another.
Yes.
And then it continues.
Perhaps more worryingly is how just crazily anti-agriculture she is. She's blaming agriculture for pretty much everything here. You know, she says that it's responsible for like slavery, war, hunger, disease, etc., and that agriculture is the end of the world, aiming instead to reduce the population by 90% to a hunter-gatherer/herder society. I understand a lot of people are down with like lowering the population and the stress on the planet, but this is a little bit too far, and I don't think it's very based in fact and science. I mean, just study chimpanzee warring tribes and you'll be aware that agriculture is not needed for strife like that.
All the animals have run to hide. As their home is being leveled, they will run to that last acre because it's absolutely terrifying. They've got nowhere else to go. So they're hiding in there. And then you have to do that last acre. And it's just nothing but blood.
They talk about like animals getting caught in combines and stuff, but they've radio collared mice in these harvest studies and they run away. Yeah, I'm sure there are cases where some deer get confused and they get caught, but the mice run away. That's what we have studies on so far.
And so when the combine comes, those deer are programmed evolutionarily to lay still and be still. And I can't tell you the number of farmers who it clogs up the combine. They have to stop and they have to dig the poor dead baby deer out of the combine.
And fine, let's say that there's a baby deer killed in the last patch of every wheat harvest, every one. For some math, wheat is 4 million calories per acre. The USDA says the average wheat farm is 445 acres. So for 1.8 billion calories per harvest, and the average person needing 55 million calories in a lifetime, we're talking about less than 1/30th of a deer death if you relied on wheat for your whole lifetime of calories, okay? You're getting the idea. But to rely on deer hunting, say as a carnivore, like Ken wants you to be, they tend to eat about 2 pounds of meat per day or 730 pounds per year. With a generous 58 pounds of meat per deer, you would have to kill over 12 deer per year or 900 over a lifetime. You get it. In the end, perhaps the most important thing is that Lierre is presenting a chain of anecdotes here, so many that I didn't even get to cover it all. But if you look at the actual research on these things she's concerned about, type 2 diabetes, there was even one point she mentioned thyroid disease. These things are lower in a vegan diet. That's what mountains of research shows. And then her weird view of like, it doesn't matter what dies because it's all like equal is just like totally unhinged, and just so many more wacky views. I mean, defending dog meat consumption, like the fact that the comments weren't like, what are you guys talking about, just goes to show that people are just eating all of this stuff up. And of course, if you would like to try Seed's DS01 Daily Symbiotic, just click the link below and use the code Mike25 for 25% off your first month's supply. So like how Ken Berry called for the video to be shared, I'm gonna have to call for this video to be shared in response if you would like to. And of course, you can feel free to like, subscribe, all that good stuff as well. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.